For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with blowing and freezing snow.
Hello and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most interesting people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains, and I was just thinking about how all of my injuries have happened in foreign countries or on the road. I broke my face in 3 places at Alta, Utah in 2011. I broke my kneecap in Japan in 2013. I blew my ACL on the same knee in Japan in 2015. I got dengue fever in Indonesia in 2012. Oh, and I did dislocate my shoulder at Palisades Tahoe in 2024. So I guess I did get 1 injury at home. My guest today is Caroline Gleich. Caroline is a professional ski mountaineer, filmmaker, author, and one of the most visible climate advocates in the outdoor world. She's climbed and skied some of the biggest lines on the planet, including multiple 8,000 meter peaks, while using her platform to push hard for outdoor conservation. In 2024, Caroline ran for the United States Senate in Utah, bringing climate policy, public lands, and outdoor access directly into the political arena. It was one of the most high-profile campaigns ever launched by a professional athlete in the outdoor space, and it changed long-standing assumptions about who gets to run for office and whose voices belong there. Hello, Caroline. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, when did you ski last?
Oh, I skied when we got this mid-October, I think it was, and
Oh, you already skied?
Yeah, I tried to get out during this early storm we had, and it was quite rocky, so I haven't been up yet again. How about you?
I skied a couple of weeks ago. I was in Antarctica, so I was ski guiding a trip down there, and I haven't skied since I got back to Utah because it's been pretty dry. But I do love that with how long you've been doing this and how experienced you are and all the things you've done in your life, you still froth so hard that you go ski probably terrible conditions on rocks and dirt and grass in October. That makes me very happy. I love to see that level of froth when somebody that's been around for a while doing this.
I find it never really gets old, and skiing is such a beautiful lifelong sport. Like, I love the way it brings people from different generations together, and I get so excited when I see people in their 80s and 90s skiing, as well as like the 2 and 3 year old. It's just a great sport. I love it.
Do you hope that'll be you? I see old people and I think, I hope I can still ski when I'm old. I hope that, I haven't just broken my body down by then.
I pray that I can be like the little old gray lady climbing up mountains and skiing down. That is my ultimate dream in life.
I'm with you. I like that. How many days did you ski last winter?
I was over 150 last winter.
So you do keep track?
I do keep track, yes.
Yes, nobody does on this podcast. So there is another nerd like me. I do it on my Google Calendar.
Yeah, I do it on Strava. When I upload my activity for the day, I write the day number, but I want to go back to keeping a spreadsheet too, because I love looking back at like my total vertical miles, how many summits I did, and like just to keep notes about snowpack and weather and conditions and stuff. So I think I'm going to go back to a Google sheet where I log every day of my workouts.
I need to get better at that too. I remember a long time ago, my friend Aaron Rice sent me his spreadsheet, and I was like, this is so sick. What's wrong with you? Like, don't ever show this to anyone. And then because of that spreadsheet keeping ideology, he was the first person to do, you might have heard, he did the uphill 2 million vertical feet in 1 year. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it why you were into that now. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I skied a lot with Aaron. And
you have?
Yeah, I've skied. He's such a great guy. He's one of my favorite people to ski with. Talk about someone who's always stoked on skiing. I mean, that year he skied a million vert. He just always had a smile on his face. And I always knew I'd have a partner to get out with if I was looking for someone, which is one of the big challenges of being a backcountry skier, is finding partners.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is weird, even in Utah, this massive amount of people in our city, it can still be hard. Well, Caroline, today I really want to dig into your skiing, your mountaineering, your run to be a U.S. Senator, and your impressive life in general. But first, I would love it if you could share your quick and dirty life story.
Yeah. I was born in Minnesota in the frozen flatlands of the Midwest. And I have 3 brothers, 3 older half siblings. So I'm the third out of 4. And when I was a kid, we had a lot of family in Utah. So we'd take these trips out west. My parents would wake us up at like 2 a.m. and we'd drive straight through from Minnesota. So I fell in love with the alpine start at that time. And let's see, during the ski trips, my dad would have a competition of like whichever kid was the most aggressive and best skier would be crowned the animal status. So we were always competing for like who could be the animal. And I just loved those trips, and I'd count down every day in my school calendar till I'd get to go skiing in Utah. I was absolutely obsessed with Utah. And then I moved to Utah when I was 15 with my parents. And then when I graduated from high school, I began pursuing my career as a professional skier. So I had no competitive ski background. I had my brother's hand-me-downs. I never got a new pair of skis till I was sponsored. And I built my career. Like, I went to the University of Utah. I worked a million odd jobs as like a cashier and a greeter at REI, a ski nanny, a Nestle hot cocoa girl, like whatever I could do. And just put it all together, and then started approaching sponsors and building my career, and then getting more into backcountry skiing and ski mountaineering. And I also got a degree at the University of Utah, a BS in anthropology. So that was really important. I did a political internship at the end of college where I worked for Governor Gary Herbert's environmental advisor at the Utah Capitol. So yeah, I wanted to merge advocacy, government policy with my athleticism and with my love for the outdoors. I was the first woman to climb and ski all 90 lines in the shooting gallery. And then I've climbed and skied some of the biggest mountains on earth. So Cho-Oyu, the 6th highest peak in the world, I climbed and skied that in 2018. I climbed Mount Everest in 2019. I've climbed Kilimanjaro, Mount Vinson in Antarctica. I skied Vinson, which was really cool. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, I've been able to ski all over the world, but I still think Utah has the best skiing.
I love that. Well, I don't even have to ask that question now. And you brushed over it, so if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. But I lost my brother when I was 19, and he was 13. And I know that you lost one of your brothers, and it looks like it was in an avalanche. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of my story. And so when I was 15 years old, my half-brother Martin was killed in an avalanche in Big Cottonwood Canyon in Stairs Gulch. And Martin was a big inspiration on my life because he was the person who taught me how to pack my backpack, and we'd go backpacking, and he taught me how to tie a figure 8 knot and would always take me rock climbing. And he really instilled in me this love of the outdoors and also a spirit of stewardship. So when I lost my half brother, it was really heavy as a 15-year-old, and seeing my parents' grief and everything. And I really wanted to be a backcountry skier, but I was basically forbidden from backcountry skiing. So I had to find a way to do it. And I think like it really informed a lot of...
Like your parents forbid you because of what happened to your brother.
Yeah, like they really didn't... No. It's an important part of like how I've approached risk management, because most people, when they start their backcountry skiing or mountaineering, they start out really risky until they have a close call or an accident, and then they start taking the classes and going back. But because I had that happen before I'd ever stepped foot in the backcountry, I had to learn how to approach risk management differently, because I couldn't fathom putting my family and my parents through that kind of pain.
No way.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to jump in, but I was going to say I was really conservative in how I approached developing my mountain sense. And I spent a lot of time tiptoeing around the resorts and then the side country, and then getting more and more into backcountry skiing so that I could really understand all the layers of snow and how things are after a storm, and just learning how to understand the physical elements that lead to an avalanche with weather and snowfall, but also the human making errors that lead to mountain accidents. And that was a huge takeaway for me, is like, we have to be willing to question authority, disrupt groupthink, question the expert halo, and all of those things. And so that's been a big sort of one of my values, I think, and just one of the ways that I live my life is I think it's really important for us to question authority.
And it sounds like you were scared straight in the backcountry before you even got in there, which I think is not what you want in life, but if it happens, I think that can be a blessing. And how did losing your brother change you? How did it change the trajectory of your life?
Well, shortly after he was killed in the avalanche, my family moved to Utah when I was 15. And his wife was pregnant with their child at the time. And so we moved to Utah shortly after. So it really changed the whole trajectory of my life. And
is that why you moved to Utah?
That's a big part of the reason we moved. Okay. Yeah, it was a really heavy thing. And it was a dark time for sure. It was a hard thing as a kid when you're like, 15, you're not quite a kid, you're not quite an adult, you're just in this in between. But yeah, it was really challenging. But it brought me to Utah, which I'm really happy that it brought my family to Utah.
And how much of who you are today, you're an athlete, an activist, candidate more, do you think comes directly from you losing him so young?
I mean, it was really, that time of your life is really formative. So yeah, it informed a lot of who I am today, and especially like those early childhood experiences that we shared together in the mountains. I mean, those were like my favorite childhood memories when we'd go backpacking, and I was like a really stubborn kid who just like wanted to keep up with my brothers. And I think having older brothers too really shaped who I am, because it's made me comfortable competing in a man's arena. And that's like so much of what being a professional athlete and also a U.S. Senate candidate is like, you have to be comfortable stepping into like men's spaces, taking up space and power. So I think always being slightly smaller and younger than my brothers, like I had to work extra hard to keep up with them. But I think that taught me a really strong work ethic. It taught me that it's okay to step into those spaces, to stand my ground, and to step into my power.
And if Martin, your brother, was here now, or if he could look down and see the life you've built for yourself, what do you think that he would think?
I think he would be so stoked. And I think about him all the time. Like every time I drive up Big Cottonwood Canyon and I drive by Stairs Gulch, like it took me a while before I could do that drive and pass that part of the canyon without feeling like viscerally sick to my stomach. It was a couple years before I could not think of that or to think about it in a different way. And yeah, I mean, I like to think that the people we've lost are still with us and that we carry them with us in our hearts. And so I see Martin and I see my other friends that have passed. I see them in the birds on the ridge lines, and I think of them often.
I think that's the key, is that they live on in our memories. And to, even if there's little things like, even when the clock hits 5:55 or all the numbers are the same, I make a wish and knock on wood. And one of my wishes is to think about those people, that even one of my dogs that is gone. And it really helps me. And I think it's sort of an easy way towards gratitude and change, really, that helps me a lot. And I really appreciate you sharing, because I know that is challenging stuff to talk about. But I think it's my perspective from losing my brother. It made me better. It's the hard times in life that make us better, not the easy times. It's the challenges that make us who we are. And I think part of who you are now is this U.S. Senator candidate. And to me, that was so impressive. It was so exciting to see somebody in our outdoor space go so far. And I have a lot of questions, but let's start from the beginning. What made you decide to run for U.S. Senate in Utah last year?
There are so many reasons I decided to run for office. I think one of them is like, I'm the kind of person that follows through on the things I say I'm going to do. And when it comes to running for office, it's one of those things I think a lot of us have thought about. Like, we've looked at our elected officials and thought, I could do better, or they're doing a poor job, or what are they doing? Like, what are they doing? Because Congress is so inefficient, and I just look at who's in charge, and I think most everyday people could do a better job working for their constituents. So that was part of it. I think another part of it was the 2021, like in Utah, we got really badly gerrymandered after the last census. So our voting maps were drawn in a way where our votes are, in a lot of cases, kind of meaningless. It's really hard to elect leaders that represent our communities when our maps are drawn in a way that the politicians in power are choosing their voters rather than the other way around. So I was really frustrated about that. And I was really concerned about the direction that I saw our state and country headed in, where instead of addressing issues like our air quality, housing affordability, the growing inequality between rich and poor, reproductive freedom and healthcare, I saw our politicians really focusing on these fringe issues and really pandering to billionaires, multimillionaires developers, industry, and not really caring about everyday people and everyday working families. So I felt like I had gone to DC and I'd go to the Utah State Legislature and I'd go to city council meetings and I'd tried to make our politicians listen. Like I'd made a lot of efforts to reach them and to ask them to support or oppose specific pieces of legislation or initiatives, but I felt like they weren't listening. So running for office was a way that I felt like they're going to have to answer to me. Like on a debate stage, they don't have a choice and they're going to have to answer the questions. So it was largely out of like some frustration and frankly, anger. And then there was also a part of deep curiosity because as I've gone about my role as an environmental advocate, I've seen just how we talk about the influence of big money in politics. And you look at a group like the US Senate, where 75% are men, the average age is 65. There are more men named John than women of color. So it's like it doesn't represent the demographics of America. And I think we need more young people, more women, more people from different backgrounds. But it seems like they were all pretty wealthy, retired people. And I really wanted to also understand why it was that way. And so running for office was also a way for me to like get a crazy education in the world of campaign finance and federal elections. And I was curious, like, how do politicians get bought by big money interests? And I really learned by running all these different ways that billionaires and other groups, dark money, influence our elections.
And there's a lot of all of that. Yeah, and so it begs the question, what was it like running for Senate? And did running for Senate kind of ruin your life? What was it, what you thought it was going to be, or was there a lot of negativity, positivity? Tell me everything.
Well, it was very different than I expected it would be. We like to think that running for office is going out into communities and meeting and listening. And the reality is that you're spending 90% of your time fundraising because it costs millions of dollars to run a competitive U.S. Senate campaign. And it really favors people who are independently wealthy, retired, have tons of time, and also are extremely well connected with other wealthy people because you are super dependent on your donors. And if you don't have that kind of money to bankroll your campaign, you really can't run the kind of campaign that you want to run. So it was extremely challenging. I thought I could do it as a part-time gig and continue my other work as a professional skier, but it became really all-encompassing between the schedule, the fundraising demands, and once your name is going to be on the ballot and people have given you hundreds of thousands of dollars, you feel a different kind of responsibility also to work as hard as you can to get every vote and to get your message out there. So it was incredibly stressful. At one point on the campaign, my voice got really hoarse and I went to a speech therapist and I had actually like calloused my vocal cords from talking so much. She was like, you need to take vocal rest for a week. I herniated some discs in my back just from sitting so much, like on planes and in cars. So my body wasn't used to sitting, working in an office all the time. Not to say that being a professional skier and making that as your living doesn't require a lot of office work, because it does. It requires a lot of hours of meetings and contract negotiation and content editing and video and photo editing. But running for Senate, it was kind of traumatic, honestly. Because the other thing no one told me when I filed is that if your campaign goes into debt, you're personally responsible. And so,
really? I never knew that.
Yeah, I mean,
whoa, that's intense.
It's super intense. Everyone had told me you shouldn't spend your own money to run for office. So, and I don't think anyone should have to spend any of their own money to run for office because you're giving that in your time and in your energy and your life. So it was really stressful, really traumatic because it was really difficult to keep up with the pace of fundraising. And all of a sudden I had we started to scale and build and bring on more staff, and you have payroll coming up. And if you don't put in the hours calling donors, it's called call time, where you sit in an office and you cold call donors and ask them for money. If you don't put in the hours and you can't keep up with the pace of fundraising and you can't make payroll, you're going to be in trouble if it continues.
Personally liable.
You're going to be personally liable. Yeah. So those were just a couple of the challenges. And honestly, I'm really glad I did it because I believe that voters deserve a choice. They deserve to have competitive elections. And even if there was statistically a less than 1% chance that I could win, I still believe in showing up and centering the conversation and giving voters statewide a choice and an option and showing people a different kind of leader and a different kind of politician. So yeah, it was really lonely and really sad. A lot of my sponsors dropped me.
Skiing sponsors?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And outdoor brands right away. And
really? Why do you think that was?
I mean, one of them said, like, we don't want to be involved in any partisan politics. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that was really challenging because, like, I worked for 20 years basically to build up my career and to build my small business.
Your brand.
Yeah, so that was really hard. Like, the whole thing was really hard. And there were moments of joy and happiness, but it was really lonely. And it's like, it was a big weight. It was a lot of work. It was so much work.
I can feel the emotion coming out of you right now. Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really hard and really scary. And I didn't know all the ways it would change my life. And I don't know that it changed my life for the better, but I'm really glad I did it.
Like we said, it's the challenges that make us who we are and make us better. I am curious on just I have a lot of questions, but how big was your staff? How much skiing did you actually do during this? You probably weren't actually able to ski that much.
Yeah, we had 4 or 5 part-time and full-time staff people. Yeah, I mean, the amount of infrastructure that you have to develop to run a campaign but a lot of it is really just around the fundraising. So like when you're doing your call time, which is what you spend most of your time doing, you have somebody staffing you for that a lot of the time, where they're in the room with you, listening to your calls on speaker, and they're taking notes and recording pledges and conversations so that they do the follow-up. So if someone pledges on the phone to give you like $200, they'll follow through and call that person 6 times until they fulfill their pledge.
I'm sure you feel the same. Wouldn't it be nice to be working on policy and working to help the people that in your district instead of working to make money? But so be it, because that's the way it is. We're not going to be able to change that anytime soon.
Yes. I mean, I 100% think campaigns should be publicly financed, and the campaign season should be a lot shorter. Like, you shouldn't have to devote a whole year of your life to running for office. 3 months max. Everybody should get the same amount of money per office you're running for, and that would really level the playing field. And I'd also like to see term limits, ranked choice voting, and the end of Citizens United, which is the Supreme Court decision that allowed corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money on election influence through super PACs.
No, that is pretty wild how that operates. So
Yes.
Tell us about your skiing during that year.
So I think I probably skied 100 days still.
You still skied, okay.
I need to double check my log, but yes, I mean, like, I definitely, this past year I've averaged 2 hours of working out per day. That last year it was maybe like 45 minutes per day. Some of the days were really short, where I would just go to Deer Valley or Alta and like make a couple quick laps. And some of the days were really, really short. But even just getting out for like 3 runs was so helpful and beneficial to my mental health. And so it got really intense at the end of the campaign. But at the beginning part, I should have been working harder in retrospect to get that early money and whatnot. I was still also trying to balance my ski career and all of my other obligations. But by the end, it was like 100%, 110% just focused on the campaign.
Can you tell us more about that end, how intense it was, and what it was like for you emotionally?
I mean, traveling around the state, running statewide, doing call time in every spare hour from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like, I would start calling the East Coast at 7 a.m. So I'd get through those calls and then call the Midwest and Utah. Well, like, call all the time zones throughout the normal hours of the day. And then I would call California until 10 p.m. So like every free moment.
16-hour days every day.
10, 14, 16-hour days, and then going sometimes to 3 or 4 events per day and giving like tons of speeches, doing media. But one of the full-time staff people was just a scheduler to help manage my schedule and to confirm and to like respond to inquiries and whatnot. So it was really intense. It was really draining. And I just remember every morning getting up and looking at my schedule and just being like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the whole day. Like, there's so many things I have to do today. And like, you just have to take it one step at a time. And I think the part that is really difficult is that there's not really space to be a human. I guess kind of like being an athlete too. A lot of my contracts as an athlete have specifically stated that if I get injured or pregnant, that I'll be off the team and not get a paycheck.
It says pregnant in the women's contract. I didn't know that.
It doesn't say pregnant specifically, but it doesn't also protect pregnancy. Like, one of the big things that I fought and advocated for was to add pregnancy protection clauses to contracts. And there were a few years that sponsors were doing that. That's kind of tapered off. So, but yeah, a lot of them say if you get injured and you can't do your job for more than like 7 days, you're not going to get a paycheck. And so it kind of creates this toxic. I remember early in my career where we would just pop, we call it vitamin I, ibuprofen, just like taking NSAIDs all the time because like body hurts. Like, you have hook neck and like your back is messed up and you maybe got a concussion the day before, or you might have fractured something, but you just keep skiing because that's what you do. And so being a candidate is very similar. It's like you just keep showing up and you almost lose touch with your body in a sense because everything could hurt. Like, your vocal cords are calloused and you might feel awful, but you just have to keep going and keep showing up. Can't really cancel things because you're tired or whatever. It doesn't leave a lot of space for being a human. You kind of learn to become like a robot. And I think there's good things about that. Like, I think there's good things about having a good work ethic and like being willing to show up consistently. But I also think there's a toxicity with that. And it's something culturally in America that like, I think we have a really unhealthy relationship with work where like people are rewarded for grinding themselves into pieces. And I wish we could adopt more of like that European mentality where everyone just closes down for a couple hours in the afternoon for a siesta, I think that's a lot healthier.
No question. And take the month of August off, everybody at once, and somehow everything's fine. It's not all going to fall apart. I'm way off my line of questions here, but I am just curious. So you're going through the end of your campaign. You're ground down to a nub. What was your emotional support network like? Well, you're saying you felt very alone, and I'm seeing that now.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of those budget calls where you realize this is all on my shoulders, or it's like, what did I get myself into? And you just feel like, I don't know, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of times waking up at like 3 a.m, just feeling like sick to your stomach and not being able to sleep. But my husband, Rob, he is so good. We're so good at crewing each other. And so especially towards the end of the campaign, like he really showed up for me in a huge way. And he would be like up in the morning, making me breakfast and bringing it to me in my office, or packing my lunch and steaming my clothes to help get me out the door. Towards the end, he was like driving me around and helping oversee a lot of the final finance decisions so that we could end the campaign without that debt that I was like so worried about. And yeah, I mean, it's like becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because everybody thinks you're not going to win. So then they don't fund you and they don't contribute to your campaign. And then it becomes almost impossible to reach voters and to get your message out there. Like people don't even know that you're running because you don't have money to reach voters. So it was really challenging. And yeah, it's a messed up system. It's so messed up, and politics is so corrupt and so dirty and toxic. I knew a lot of those things going into it, but it showed me in a different way how badly we need reform for campaign finance and for federal election oversight and for all of these things if we ever want Congress to be representative of what America is. And if we ever want it to work. Yeah.
And it's an uphill battle, and I appreciate you fighting it. So you mentioned the 1% chance. So it was pretty clear you couldn't win this Senate seat. This is you ran as Democrat. It's a very red state, but you ran anyway. I suspect you knew exactly what you were up against, and you're reflecting now that you did, but you knew that you could come away with something. You knew that you could make an impact in some way, shape, or form. What were those wins for you? Why did you run if you knew you were going to lose?
Well, why? I mean, when I was like a kid that had a dream of becoming a professional skier without any competitive skiing experience, like what are the chances that you'll actually be able to make it as a professional skier? A lot of people would assign the chances as less than 1%. Or going to climb Everest 6 weeks after you fully tore your ACL. A lot of people would peg your chances of summit success really low. So I've never really been one to like look at the odds and take, I take that all with a grain of salt. But I think that, again, it's like to center conversations in a campaign around certain issues, to show an example to other outdoor people or other unlikely candidates, young women, younger people, people that aren't from political dynasties or that aren't lifelong politicians, that you can run and you can step into this space. And to be an example, especially to young girls, like there were these moments on the campaign trail where these little girls would look at me just so enamored, and to be an example for them of what they can strive to be, to me, that was worth every single hour of that 11 months. It might have been one or two girls that remember that going forward, but to me, that alone is worth it. And so I think like at the end of the day, I've already heard from multiple candidates that have filed their candidacies and have stepped up to serve and to run because they saw me do it. And to me, like that's a huge win. So I've never been one to view like win or loss. That to me, it's like I'm not afraid of trying projects that I might fail on, because if you keep trying, eventually you might win.
I love that perspective, and I love the depth of the answer to inspire folk. And I can just see from a public speaking standpoint, you are so strong. I think that you and I were in 2010 or so, both went to a Cliff meeting. And not that we were public speaking, but I'm sure between that last time I got to hang out with you till now, I bet you feel 1,000% more confident in your public speaking and your ability to reach people and connect with people and talk to anyone, including right now.
I mean, I still get really nervous for public speaking. I'm not going to lie.
I sure do. Change that, my voice cracks. It's like, oh, shit.
It's still really stressful and nerve-wracking for me, but I do enjoy the challenge. And again, it's like you talked about it earlier. The things that we grow the most on are the hardest ones in our lives. You know, my dad used to say, like, it'll put some hair on your chest or whatever. And so I definitely sprouted a bunch of chest hairs, got a lot of new gray hairs. But I don't think that kind of experience, I mean, to be U.S. Senate candidate on the ballot for a statewide race for your first election, I just feel like it was such a cool learning opportunity. Like that's something you could never learn in school. Like you can't get a degree that teaches you the things that I learned. And yeah, it really changed my life. So I'm super glad I did it. And I would consider doing it again. But I don't know that I want to talk about that right now.
I do have to ask that question. We'll do it later. I'll try to get you off guard. But no, I'm glad you did it too. And I love the depth of your answer, your previous answer about inspiring people and getting other people. You're seeing other people running for office. And so I want to ask a more shallow question now, because I think about this all the time, because I don't know how many people fantasize about being a congressperson or a senator, but I do. And
you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's something I'd ever do because of this next question. If you actually won the Senate seat, you'd have to move to Washington, D.C. and effectively stop skiing. Were you ready to make that sacrifice, Caroline?
Absolutely, I was. Because here's the thing, is that when you look at the schedule of Congress, they're in session for like 140 to 155 days per year. And so what most members of Congress do is like they don't actually live in D.C. full time. Every week, Senator Mike Lee and John Curtis fly to D.C. on Monday or Tuesday, and they come back on Thursday or Friday. And they only spend a few nights per week there. Yeah, if you fly to D.C. on a Monday or Tuesday, there's a good chance you'll see him on the direct flight from SLC to DCA, because I sat next to Mike Lee on my flight to DC in mid-December. And so you have to get like a crash pad there, and sometimes members of Congress actually like some I've heard sleep in their offices, which is not technically allowed, but they also bunk together in these weird bachelor pads. I heard that Senator Schumer's was like a rat-infested apartment that he shared with a few other senators, and they all slept like on couches like puppies. Like that sounds absolutely awful to me. So there would definitely be some things to figure out in terms of that, but I don't think you have to say goodbye to skiing completely. I mean, you say bye to being a sponsored skier because you can't have corporations by your influence once you're a member of Congress. But if I had been elected as a 38-year-old woman from Utah, that would have been the honor of my lifetime. And I would have given 120% of myself to the 6-year term in the U.S. Senate. And I mean, it would have been an absolute dream.
In the vein of that dream, what was your core message of your campaign? I love the idea that you're willing to sacrifice skiing. So I think that our listeners should, granted, you might fly back here every Thursday or Friday, and then you could potentially ski for the weekend, but you'd probably be so busy. It might be like what you experienced during the campaign. You'd ski for an hour or two at best. But I love the idea that maybe there's a Christmas break or things like that.
Totally.
But anyway, so what was the core message of your campaign, if you could boil it down for us?
I think the biggest message is that if we want to change Congress, we have to change the people that we elect to be our leaders. Mm-hmm. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
How did Utahns respond? What did they respond most to when you talked about your personal story, your campaign, your message?
One of the top issues I heard from Utahns, or one of the top things that they love about Utah, is our access to protected public land. And so overwhelmingly, I think people want to see members of Congress that are really committed to protecting our public lands. I think one of the biggest things is people want to see a change in the role of big money in politics, and they want elected officials that actually work for people and not for big donors and not for big money and not for corporations. So that was something. Another thing that really surprised me on the campaign trail was how united folks were and energized about reproductive freedom and talking about ensuring that people can have the freedom to start a family when and how they like. And that was something that I've always felt to be true, but I was surprised by how much that resonated especially in some of the more rural places I spoke in Utah.
And I love you saying that public lands are important for us. As an outdoor person, I feel like I'd be hard-pressed to find a hunter, a fisher, a skier, probably even like a four-wheel drive driver that would be happy about losing our public lands. And our Senator Mike Lee seems to be pushing that in Utah, and I guess it's nationwide. When you sat down next to Mike Lee, I'm assuming you guys had a chat. Are you able to share any of the things that you folks talked about?
Yeah, well, he was actually quite nice, and he's like, I didn't recognize him because he's quite bald now. And
he used to have more hair.
He used to have more hair. So I didn't recognize him, and he actually said hi, and he said I did a nice job during the debate. But we didn't really get, it was a 5-hour flight, so we did not get it. I did not really, at that point, it was only a few weeks after the campaign had ended. I did not want to get into it with him on a flight. There's a lot of things I would have liked to say. However, I accepted his congratulations, and he put on his noise-canceling headphones, and then he was respectful, though. I was in the middle, and he didn't man-spread into my armrest, so I appreciated that. The middle person should always get the armrests.
Okay, let's have a conversation here. The middle person gets both armrests. That is the rule.
Armrests.
Everybody else has something. You can lean into the aisle. You got a lot of space there. You can lean onto the window and kind of sleep. So let's make it clear to our listeners. The middle person gets both armrests. So I'm glad that Mike Lee was respectful of the rules of the land. Yes. Or the air, I suppose.
Yes. But he is really set on selling our public lands. And when you look at who's funding his campaigns, you see that he's bankrolled by BlackRock, which is one of the largest investors and buyers of private property and homes in the country. And so it's not a shock at all that that's what he's trying to do when you see who's funding his campaign.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And it seems there's always a through line with the politicians in that way. When you had your debates, and was that a primary debate? Was there a primary in the I know not a lot of Democrats are probably running. Who did you debate with?
Yeah, so there was one debate that was hosted and televised by the Utah Debate Commission. You can watch it on YouTube if you want. And I debated the current senator now, Senator John Curtis. He was then a representative running for the Senate seat. And then another independent candidate, Carlton Bowen. So it was me and the two guys. And yeah, there was not a primary debate because I secured the nomination for the Democratic Party at the state convention. So there's two paths to get to the ballot. You can get the nomination from the party at the convention if you can get a certain percentage of the vote. And you can either come out of the convention and go to primary, or you can collect signatures to get your name on the primary ballot. So those are the paths to the ballot in Utah.
Wow. Okay, cool. I did not realize that. So you didn't have to really battle too hard to get the nomination for the Democrats, and then you had one debate on the big stage. What was that debate like?
Well, debate prep and debate is one of my favorite things because, again, I grew up with 3 brothers and 3 older half siblings. And so our family dinner table conversations, my family was also very conservative growing up. And so our family dinner conversations involved a lot of debate. And when you have 3 brothers, you're just always having to fight to be heard. So it just felt like normal family dinner for me. And I love debate. I think it's really fun. I went to state as a sophomore in high school for speech and for debate, so I have like a little bit of a background, but I just think it's a really fun venue to showcase different ideas and to hear different ideas and to talk about stories and policy. And I put a lot of hours into the debate prep because I was really nervous about it, but I think like by the end of the campaign, it's funny because even with skiing or public speaking or running for office, like I feel by the end I felt like I owned it. Like I felt like I did really well. And the YouTube comments were really validating. Like all these people were accusing the YouTube commenters of being like paid Caroline supporters. And I'm like, oh, if only they knew that we had absolutely zero money for that.
Yeah.
If only they knew.
It's like, wow, they think we're bigger than we are.
They think we're bigger than we are, that we have paid trolls in the comments. But everyone was like, Caroline owned it. And I think for me, it was really validating because when I went and filed my candidacy on January 8th, I was super scared and nervous. I felt like this little girl. I had no idea what I was doing. And by then, I felt like I had really stepped into my power and I had grown into my shoes. The shoes were big that I stepped into, but I grew into them and I stepped in and I became something that I didn't know that I could become. And so I feel like the debate was a real highlight for me.
Well, congratulations. That's really cool, exciting, and it just makes me happy to see your joy and your journey and to end up in a place that you probably didn't realize you could even get to. I do want to take one step back because I've been living in Utah since 2018, so it's kind of, and I'm a Californian, so I'm from like I grew up in like San Francisco, I'm like from the hippiest place on earth, and so it is interesting to see the politics of Utah is a deep red state, meaning it's very Republican, but it's not a normal red state. And you've been here longer than me, and you really studied the state because of the campaign that you went through. Tell us how it's not a normal red state, especially when it comes to LGBTQ, immigration, environmental considerations, and maybe you found other things.
I think, first of all, that it's really frustrating when we label states red or blue because they didn't really start doing that until the 2000s when everyone had color TVs. And it was just a way after the presidential elections for the news people to say, like, this state went blue or this state went red. But I don't think it's fair to say that we're a deep red state because almost 40% of Utahns voted for Vice President Harris in the last presidential election. Really? 37.8% went for Vice President Harris.
Wow,
so that's more to me than a deep red state. And I think Utahns are always fiercely independent and we don't fit neatly into little boxes. I mean, Utahns are incredibly hardworking. We have a lot of great innovation here. I feel it's a really great state for business. It's a beautiful state, like the love of public lands and the desire to be a good steward of the land for the next generation, I think is something that unites all of us as Utahns. And in our hearts, I do believe people are tolerant, open-minded, and have a lot of love for their neighbors. And we are also have more of a global perspective because so many people travel to do missions. And
I'll just jump in real quick. My quick understanding is we have a lot of Mormons in Utah, and a traditional Mormon pathway, if you end up on that, pushes you to usually go internationally for 2 years, I believe it is, and do a mission, which is basically you're recruiting folks to come to the Mormon faith. And it's interesting because Mormons get a lot of culture. They speak a lot of languages. I know that call centers do well in Utah because there's people that are Americans who born and raised here who also speak perfectly these other languages because they spent all this time in these other cultures, these other places, and they bring some of that with them when they come back. Continue.
But also for the first time ever, the Salt Lake Tribune's reporting indicated that there are people who are self-declared Mormons that for the first time, it's slightly less of the majority, that are like slightly less. And so, I mean, the
like
church...
52% is maybe non-Mormon now, something like that.
Yes, it's like
these
barely,
are early numbers, but
yeah. And that's people self-reporting. If you look at the church's numbers, it's much different, because like it depends on who's asking the question. Because Mormonism, I think too, is much more than just a religion. Like it's a culture, it's a family way of life, and it's not as easy for somebody to leave that as it is in other religions. So I think there's a lot of cultural forces and family forces that would lead someone, if the church was asking, to say that they are still part of the church, but if it was an independent newspaper, to give a different response. So I think that that's interesting. Utah's demographics are really changing. We've had a lot of growth. A lot of out-of-state people have moved to Utah. Actually, Biden-Harris outraised Trump in Utah. So we have also a lot of blue dollars, a lot of Democratic dollars. But I don't know. I actually don't like party politics for Democrat or Republican, because I think it brings to the surface all of the dangerous forces that I learned to study and to disrupt in the mountains, you know, to avoid avalanche accidents, like the expert halo, groupthink, all of those heuristic traps. I see them magnified within party structure. And I don't know, I ran as a Democrat. That was a choice. That was what I saw the clearest path to the ballot. But in my heart, I feel like I'm more of an independent, because I like to question authority, question the status quo. And I think the Democratic Party is really also corrupt in a lot of ways in how the politicians and the party is funded by billionaires and big donors. And when you look at like who our elected officials are working for, I think there's a lot of broken corruption on all sides.
No question. Yeah, I don't think many people would question that at all. And it's invasive. It's everywhere. The only other comments I had on the Utah thing is it will be interesting, because Utah, I think, has the largest young population. How do I say that right? It's the youngest state in the U.S.
Yes.
I think that's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
There's just no question that's going to shift social attitudes, whether you like it or not. That's a lot of young people, to have a lot of young people in one place. There's not a lot of people in the whole state. We only have 4 million people or so. But I think that'll be interesting. And I think one of the most impressive things about the Mormon culture is their work ethic and their production. Even if you look at the history of the Mormons, they just came through a lot of different places, ended up in Salt Lake City, and it's kind of a desert here, and they just built a huge city like that. I mean, it's really, if you don't know, our listeners, if you don't know the history of the Mormons, it's very worth looking up. There's some great shows on YouTube, and Johnny Harris gets into it and more, but they're very productive people. They can focus, and I guess I'm not saying it right. What I'm saying is they're community oriented. What's the right word? It's like they're civic, come together to build things, and that's maybe the easiest way to say it. So I think that it'll be interesting to see that culture plus the young people, how Utah changes. I also saw a report recently, I think from the Tribune as well, saying that they think by 2065 the population in this area, at least in the Salt Lake zone, is going to double. And if that happens, you're going to be looking at a very different political landscape, and there's just no question. So I got to ask the big question: will you run again?
Yes, I will run again. I don't know when exactly. Yeah.
And what will you run for?
I don't know, because part of the reason I ran for U.S. Senate is because there wasn't a strong U.S. Senate candidate that had stepped up. And I thought, we're not giving up a seat like that without a fight. And it reminds me that when I was in middle school, I was really into music. And the high school marching band needed a tuba player. So I played saxophone at the time, but the marching band, the head of the band was like, we need a tuba player. Will you consider playing the tuba? And I picked up the tuba and I marched with the marching band as an 8th grader with the high school marching band. And so I think it depends on what Utah needs, what my community needs, how I can be of service for my community, because beneath my desire to do these things, whether it was running for Senate or testifying to the House and to the Senate or doing all the other kinds of activism that I've done, it's this deep desire to leave this world better than I found it, and to try to do whatever I can to bring this ethic of care and compassion to my community. And so I just want to be where I can have the most efficacy and the greatest impact.
And we appreciate you doing that. And I think it's, I really like that you showing that you're able to recognize opportunity and move on it with efficiency, both with the tuba and running for Senate. You see that there's a spot there, there's an opportunity. This is how I can make my move. Well, we do have to talk about skiing and mountaineering a little bit here. because I think that's what a lot of people probably were baited into this for. I am just fascinated with your political career. So keep going. I'm a supporter of anybody who has strength in their voice and has a message and a vision. But talk us through. So you skied you have to be kind of a Utah person to appreciate this really, but skiing the 90 lines in the shooting gallery, which is in my friend Andrew McLean's book. It's about the 90 steepest, scariest, funnest lines in the Wasatch, which is the mountain range here in Salt Lake City. I kind of see that as a real starting point for you. You might not see it that way, but that's a huge accomplishment. And maybe from something like that, then you're like, oh, I could climb Everest and all that. So maybe just tell us, what did skiing those 90 lines, which I think is a huge accomplishment, what did that do for your mentality and your vision of your life as a pro skier?
Oh, I mean, it was the culmination of like 15 years of dreaming, from when I moved to Utah when I was 15 years old in 2001, and I first picked up a copy of the book, and I saw the description of Stairs Gulch, the line where my half-brother had been killed, and I felt like this fear, but this attraction and curiosity to the book, and then taking all of my avalanche courses and learning how to ice climb and rock climb and to do all the rope work, and then tiptoeing my way through the Wasatch, going to bigger and bigger lines. It was one of my favorite projects because every time it was like a good green or, like low risk avalanche day. It's like, and we had a day, it's like, what are we going to do? Which line should we do next? And so it was such a fun way for me to become really intimately familiar with the Wasatch, my home mountain range, and to just fall deeper in love with the mountains. And I think like being an Alta snowbird skier for a lot of years was kind of a gateway drug into it, because you ski like the Baldy chutes and then maybe Pipeline, and then you see like, oh, there's the cold pit and the hypodermic needle. You see it every time you're driving down the canyon. And then I think a lot of people think, oh, I'd like to ski that someday, but most people never do, because like hypodermic needle is not that easy of a line to get to. Like, it's not an easy line to ski, and it's actually like still pretty scary and technical. Like the few times I've skied it, it's not a gimme at all. And so I think I just have a total love affair with the Wasatch, with the Central Wasatch, because it's mostly in the Central Wasatch. And I think, it gave me a lot of confidence for sure as a person, because now I look when I'm driving around too, I'm like, oh, I skied that. Like, it's really fun. I don't know. Well, I mean, it really did change my life for sure. And then having REI help make the film about it, it really launched my career.
No question. Yeah. I mean, I was very impressed and inspired by it. And and I'm putting words in your mouth, which I love to do to people. But I see this as as you said, gateway drug into bigger and better mountains. Maybe not better, bigger mountains, scarier mountains. Because I know you climbed Choyu. You proposed to your husband on Choyu. You climbed Mount Everest. You've done some things in really big mountains. So tell me just a little bit about Choyu, Everest. Where else have you skied that's big and scary that we don't know about?
Yeah, I skied Pico de Orizaba in Mexico.
Oh man, that's never good either. That's in Mexico. Continue.
That was really icy. It's like 45. It's like 19,000 feet, 18,000 feet.
Yeah, I've been there. It's terrible.
I skied Mount Dixon in New Zealand. This like crazy,
cool.
super exposed face on Mount Dixon in the Southern Alps of New Zealand. I skied Mount Vincent in Antarctica, which we talked about earlier. Really cool. That was a really cool expedition. That was one of my favorites. I tried to ski Gasherbrum 2 in Pakistan and spent a month trying to get to the mountain, getting really sick. And I spent an entire month and I never saw the mountain I was meant to climb. That was a really hard trip. Yeah. I've skied in Tajikistan. I skied in Dubai recently, which was really cool.
That's cool.
I know a lot of people hate on the indoor skiing there, but I just love skiing. Like, I'll ski anywhere. I'm trying to think. A lot of cool things. I've skied in the Canadian Rockies outside of Banff and Lake Louise up there. That's one of my favorite places to ski.
That's big terrain.
But I skied a bunch in the Alps. I've done some big ski mountaineering races in the Alps. And in Peru, I've skied a bunch of big peaks. So,
oh, you did the Cordillera Blanca. That's really
I did the Cordillera Blanca. Yeah, I've done the three highest peaks of Ecuador. Yeah, I've climbed and skied a lot of big mountains. So every continent, really hundreds of mountains all around the world. And Yeah, I climbed this year Karsten's Pyramid, which is the highest peak in Oceania and the highest peak in Indonesia.
It's so hard to get a permit for, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really hard.
Tell us about that. I'm
5 years.
Fascinated.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated by that. It's the highest peak in Oceania, which is one of the 7 summits.
It's on the island of Papua, and it's been closed for the last 5 years due to a lot of geopolitical tension. There's like half of Papua is Indonesia and half is Papua New Guinea, and like the Papuans want that part that's Indonesia to become part of Papua New Guinea, and so there's a big resistance movement, and a lot of it centers around this massive gold and copper mine that's like a kilometer away from the mountain. Yeah, and it's like there's a lot of, it's a really sad story, honestly, of like kind of colonialism and U.S. intervention and control minerals and suppressing indigenous voices. There's a lot of environmental challenges with that mine. So with all of that backdrop, we waited for 5 years to try to get over there to do it. And the mountain itself rises out of the jungle, and it's this beautiful limestone face. It is the rainiest place in the world. It rains over 500 inches a year there. So we got absolutely pummeled, drenched every single day. We were there for 7 days. The climb itself is just absolutely stunning. It was one of my favorite climbs in the world. Just like super fun, 4th and 5th class scrambling on this limestone face. And then there's also some high altitude tropical glaciers you can see in the distance that are rapidly disappearing. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So it was really cool to meet other Indonesians and to learn about the history of the place and all of the challenges and to bear witness to that. Like, it's hard, actually. Like, you kind of feel conflicted as an environmentalist or like a human rights person about being in some of these places. Like, is it good that I'm here? But I really think that everything we do in life has an impact. And so I think, travel has an impact. And a lot of people hate on me because I'm a climate activist and I travel all over the world. But I really think that the positives and the benefits outweigh the negatives and the cost of it. And that like we're only going to tackle climate change as a global community, understanding how it impacts people all over the world and coming together to fight for solutions.
And what do you think the better strategy is, instead of giving each other a hard time about who has what car and all that? Or is it more going after the bigger picture, which is maybe governmental change in the form of industry regulation?
I mean, I think 100 companies are responsible for 71% of emissions. And so I think people should be happy, live their lives, do what makes them happy. If you want to have kids, have kids. If you want to go on a trip, go on a trip. If you're going to fly private, I don't know, like flying private, that has a lot more of an impact. But on the other hand, it's like we don't need 1,000 perfect climate activists. Like, we need 1 million imperfect activists that are willing to use their voice to advocate for systemic change. I think just going down the rabbit hole of blaming each other is exactly what the fossil fuel industry wants to do. They spent hundreds and millions of dollars on disinformation tactics using the same PR firms that Big Tobacco did to deflect, distort, and to change the collective responsibility away from these corporations and onto individuals. But when we attack each other, we are doing the fossil fuel industry's dirty work. We need to point the finger at the people who are most responsible and advocate for systemic change.
I am curious, I skipped this question. Why did you climb Everest? Everest is kind of commercial now. It's busy now. But I know you had a reason, so I am curious, what did it mean to you?
When I was driving to Cho-Oyu, like, one of my big dreams was to see the Himalayas and to climb and ski in the Himalayas. So when we went to Cho-Oyu, we were driving through the Tibetan highlands and the desert and these rolling hills, and we come across this corner, and in the distance we see this big, beautiful, snowy peak, and I was like, I want to ski that peak. Turns out it was Everest, and like seeing it with my own eyes changed how I felt about it. Yes, Everest, just like any big mountain, people have a lot of opinions or like they have their own experiences, but I really wanted to go, and when I saw the route and I saw the mountain, I wanted to go and see it for myself. And so Cho was definitely a bigger dream of mine. Everest was also one of Rob's big goals, my husband, because he has a huge project he's working on where he's trying to become the first person to climb the 7 summits and swim the ocean's 7. So Everest was a big goal of his, and we kind of switch off on crewing each other. So it was also to support him, but I really wanted to do it. I really enjoyed my time there. We climbed from Tibet from the North Route. So it's a different route that is like, there's still a lot of people, but in the whole year, maybe 1,000 people climb the mountain, like in an entire year.
That's the way to go, is the north route.
But no, I mean on both routes, like all year, each year,
all
only
year,
maybe 1,000 people climb the mountain. Like, I think a big mountain can handle it. If people take their stuff and practice leave no trace ethics, which we did. The north side was we did a trash pickup at base camp and we spent a couple hours and we barely it's not exactly what people say it is. So
good. And where are you at with the 7 summits?
I have a few left. I think
which ones?
I have Elbrus, Aconcagua, and Denali left.
Oh gosh, those are gonna be easy for you. I'm shocked you haven't been to Denali yet. You're gonna love
tried to climb and ski Denali in a day, and we got shut down. Yeah, with weather. Yeah.
Well, maybe give yourself 3 weeks like I did. You'll be fun.
Yes, we got up there and we turned around at 14 camp. So because the lenticulars moved in, but I would love to do. Yeah, I'd love to go back to Denali. And I went to Aconcagua and we didn't summit. We tried to ski the Polish Glacier, but the weather did not work. So.
Understanding you a little bit more through this podcast, I think that you like to have big goals, and so you got plenty of stuff left to do, and I think that's important for you. For sure. Well, we'll have to get out and ski sometime this winter. I would love to, yeah. And Marcus is going to come on the podcast too, and I would love to ski with him as well. So maybe the 3 of us could go out for a spin. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Caroline. Have a great rest of the day. Anything else you want to share here at the end of the show? No, I think that's good. I would just love to keep in touch. If folks want to follow my skiing advocacy, Instagram. I have a Substack, TikTok, all the social networks. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate your time and energy. Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with friends and family, and please be sure to subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and more. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast was edited by Liam Abbott, and I'm your host, Miles Clark.